Hi, this is Alan Whitford from RCEuro, and we're having another one of our recruitment thought leader conversations with Dave Nerz from NPA in the U.S. Hi, Dave. How you doing?
Great, Alan. How about yourself?
Very good. It's great to talk to you today. Dave, why don't you just tell me a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do?
Okay. Well, I'm Dave Nerz, and I am the president of NPA, and NPA stands for National Personnel Associates. A little bit of a misleading name. We really go by NPA, the Worldwide Recruiting Network now, because we are a global network of recruiters, and we have members on 6 continents and in about 27 countries. And I run the network for the members. I'm not a recruiter, but I know an awful lot of recruiters, and I know a lot about recruiting based on the 1,300 recruiter members that we have in our organization.
And are these recruiters specialists in any specific type of recruitment? Is it executive recruitment, blue collar? How would you say the focus is?
Yeah, good question, Alan. I'd say that primarily, if you look at our recruiting network, it is what I would consider an executive focus. So that means, anywhere from a high-powered type administrator on up to CEO, C-level people, and anything in between. And it is contingency-based recruiters almost exclusively. We do have a lot of members who are tending more towards the retained search area, but for the most part it's contingency-based. And there are members that also have what I would consider as a staffing or a temp division as a part of their business, but it's usually not the primary portion of their business. It's usually, maybe a quarter of their business. So primarily executive search, contingency focus.
All right, now is this, Dave, what some people might call like a split fees network? What's the actual business model?
Yeah, the business model, our income comes from 2 places. It comes from dues, and the dues are really the costs that you pay to be associated with and a part of the network. It gives you access to training, and it really gives you access to a peer group. Particularly from an owner standpoint, that if you want to talk about how to compensate your employees or challenges with guarantees with your clients, etc., you have a peer network that you can come to. So that's the dues portion of what we do. And there's also meetings and other types of social networking capabilities that we offer, as well as electronic tools for sharing information. And then the second component of it is what we call brokerage, and the brokerage is the percentage that you pay once you do a deal that is successful with one of your NPA partners. So it's a pay-to-play kind of a model on that side, and you pay a percentage when you do a successful deal.
Now, why is what you do perhaps different than other sharing networks or split fee networks, or are all of them pretty much of a muchness in terms of that mechanics? But what you do with, as you mentioned, your information sharing, your meetings, and the other activities, are those what differentiate you from the others?
Well, I could lie to you very well and tell you we're all completely different and we have some different model. I would say that there are some things that make us unique. I'd say that a lot of the networks try to work along some of the similar models. And what is unique about ours is probably the history that we have and the fact that we've been doing this since 1956. So wow. We're not experimenting. We didn't come out. This wasn't driven by some crazy web idea that came about recently. We've been doing this since 1956, so we know what we're doing. We're relationship based, which means that a lot of the deals that get done are because people actually know one another and they want to work with one another, and they're friends. They sometimes vacation together. I mean, just some strange things that happen when you get into a relationship-based network. I have a member right now who has had a very serious condition, lost movement in her legs, had a tumor removed from her spine. Another one of our members is basically running her business for her. Wow. As this happens. So, I mean, those are kind of the relationships that can build between people who are in our network. And the other thing that's really unique about NPA relative to the other folks that are out there, and I've really yet to meet any network that does this, is we are global in our reach. So you have partners that are based in Japan and China and Hong Kong, and Malaysia and the Philippines and London, in South America, throughout the world. You have members that can work with you, and that is truly unique. Most of the other networks get focused in a geography, work that geography well, but don't have the ability to cross boundaries, both geographic and cultural, the way we do.
Well, and I think what I've found interesting is that one of your ways you've done that, as you've mentioned, is linking up with local networks. For example, Team here in the UK,
Right.
which has done a great job of introducing people. In fact, I got an introduction from Tricia today to somebody she met recently, and that's what I like. What I think is interesting. It's not just about doing the business. It is also about continuing to help people connect with each other.
And we see that as one of our primary objectives as NPA, is to create value for our members. Team is a good example of it. I don't know how that's going to work out over a 3-5 year period, but what we're doing is we're doing an experiment, and the experiment is, can we help Team reach beyond the borders of the UK where they need to, and can our members leverage the connection to Team in order to have a more thorough connection throughout the UK and throughout Europe where it's necessary. And so we're experimenting. We're seeing what's going to happen. So far, there's some conversation going. I can't tell you of any great successes in terms of deals that have been done, but deals happen quickly and sometimes for no reason at all. In other cases, you do a lot of work and nothing comes from it. Recruiters all know that. Have lived it, unfortunately, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, it's interesting you mentioned the global aspects as well, because certainly I think you and I would both agree there's a technical talent shortage. One of the TV programs here was decrying the actual low level of mathematics and sciences that are being taken up in schools, and that we're heading for a brick wall in those technical disciplines in terms of getting new people trained. But how do you see that perhaps your network and companies should be trying to approach this global technical talent shortage?
Well, I think it's a serious issue that it's hard to imagine right now, based on the economy of the last 2 years, that we're really going to have this problem. And I think there's people who question whether there's a global talent shortage, but I think the reality is it's there. I think that recruiters probably recognize it better than employers recognize it in some cases at this point. But it's difficult to find the kind of talent that's necessary to fill these critical, technically oriented positions. But what's happening is, if you look at, for instance, engineering in the U.S., the number of engineers that come out of institutions in the U.S. is relatively small relative to what's happening in Korea and India and China. I mean, this is where the engineers are being produced in large quantities. PhDs coming out of universities in North America, and I would imagine also in Europe, are significantly reduced relative to what's happening out of China and India. So I think recruiters and employers are going to have to start reaching across some geographic boundaries to find the people that they need. And this may not happen next year, but over the next 10 years, it's a trend that is inevitable. It will have to happen, and recruiters are going to have to know how to make connections, not from New York City to Poughkeepsie, or from New York to Chicago, or even from New York to London, but they're going to have partners in Hong Kong and in Guangzhou and in Beijing. They're going to have partners in those locations.
I think you're right. A friend of mine who has a business in Singapore in the Middle East is just opening an office in Macau, because the engineering and construction industry are exploding there, and she thought, I can't do this remote. I've got to be there on site in order to make this happen. But that means she'll be a likely partner for other companies as they want to reach out to those areas.
Well, I think the on-site component is the tough part, because I look at most of the relationships that recruiters have begin and end at an employer level. So they have an employer, and it's really difficult if an employer suddenly decides that they're going to have manufacturing facilities or sourcing responsibilities in Vietnam. It's tough to decide as a recruiter that you're going to place somebody there to actually respond to their need in Vietnam. I mean, what sense does that really make for you, for a one-client relationship, to actually physically locate a person in that location? What makes sense is a partner who can do that for you, and you can turn that partner on when you need them, and you can turn that partner off when you don't need them, which means you don't add to your fixed overhead. You just have a resource that helps your client respond to the geographic areas where they want to be.
And Dave, I think that's actually a great way to wrap this up, because it goes right back to the heart of NPA, doesn't it? It's about forging those relationships, forging those partnerships, so that you can actually source when you need it and and don't when you don't.
It's fixed overhead is a scary thing if you're a recruiter, and I think a lot of people have experienced that over the last 2 years. So having partners that will engage when you need them and cost you nothing when they're not engaged is really a wonderful thing. It's a great tool.
That's great. Dave, I want to thank you again for taking the time to talk to us today, and look forward to actually meeting you in person one day.
Thanks for the opportunity, Alan, and I hope that your New York Yankees do well this year.
Thanks, Dave.
Take care.
Okay.